A single act of betrayal shattered a family, leaving behind silence, anger, and regret. But years later, through heartbreak and loss, they discovered that forgiveness can rebuild even the most broken love. The day it happened was quiet, the kind of morning that fools you into thinking life is still normal. The sunlight poured through the kitchen window, catching the steam from a fresh pot of coffee. My father, Daniel, stood at the counter, flipping through his mail like always. Bills, ads, a letter from the bank, and then one envelope that didn't belong. No return address. Just his name. He frowned, tearing it open as he sipped his coffee. A second later, his hand froze. The cup hit the counter with a hollow clink. "Dad?" I asked, half smiling, expecting some tax joke. He didn't answer. His face had gone completely pale. The air changed. The kind of silence that feels alive, like it's watching you. I walked closer. That's when I saw them, glossy photographs spilling out of the envelope. My mother, with another man, in places I recognized. Her office. Her car. The hotel from that business trip last winter. The breath left my body. Dad, he didn't move. He just stared at the pictures, his jaw tightening, his thumb brushing the edge of one photo as if touching it might make it less real. When he finally spoke, his voice was so calm it scared me. "Your mother won't be home for dinner." He gathered the photos, placed them back in the envelope, and walked out the door, still wearing his work shoes, no coat, no wallet. Just gone. The front door clicked shut, and suddenly the whole house felt wrong. The air, the light, everything. I didn't even know what to do. I just stood there, staring at the half-empty coffee cup and the envelope lying beside it, like evidence in a crime scene. When Mom came home that evening, I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. She saw the envelope immediately. Her face dropped, not in shock, but in recognition. She sat down slowly, her bag still hanging off her shoulder. "So," she said quietly, "he knows. That was it. No denial. No panic, just confirmation." "Mom," I whispered. "How long?" She didn't look up. A few years. Something inside me cracked. I thought about Dad. The way he'd worked double shifts so she could go back to school. The anniversaries he never forgot. The mornings he made her coffee first. I thought about every time she'd smiled at him, and wondered how much of it was real. "Why?" I asked. It came out more like a plea than a question. She rubbed her forehead. "Because I haven't been happy, okay? Because life isn't what I thought it would be. I didn't plan for this to happen." "That's supposed to make it better?" I snapped. "You destroyed him!" Her voice sharpened. "Don't you dare judge me. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage." I laughed bitterly. "Then leave, Mom." "Don't lie. Don't—" She slammed her hand on the table. "Enough." For a second, neither of us moved. Just breathing. Just silence. Then she said the thing I'll never forget. "Your father will get over it. He always does." That was when I realized she wasn't sorry. Not really. I turned away before she could see the tears. "He's not coming back, Mom." Her voice faltered. "He'll calm down." But even she didn't sound like she believed it. That night, I found myself pacing the kitchen, staring at the same spot where Dad had stood hours earlier. The coffee was still in the pot, gone cold. The mug was still half full. He hadn't even taken it with him. I wanted to call him, to tell him I was on his side, but I didn't know where he'd gone. His phone went straight to voicemail. And the worst part? My sister still didn't know. She was busy planning her wedding. Too happy, too distracted to see the fracture forming beneath our family. I didn't know how to tell her. I didn't know how to tell anyone. But deep down, I already knew this. Our family as we knew it had just ended. The next morning the phone rang, and the voice on the other end made me realize the worst wasn't over. It was only beginning. The phone rang before sunrise, sharp, repetitive, and wrong for that hour. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the envelope. Those photos. The look on Dad's face. When I finally picked up, my sister's voice came through the line, groggy but worried. "Why is Dad staying at Uncle Tom's?" Mom just called me crying. So he had gone somewhere safe, relief mixed with dread. He knows, I said quietly. There was silence. Then knows what? I hesitated. Saying it out loud made it too real. About Mom, about everything. I heard her suck in a breath, sharp and trembling. What are you talking about? He got pictures, I said. Someone sent him proof, her voice cracked. You're lying. I wish I was. She started crying. The kind of broken sobs that sound like they're being torn out of a person. No, she wouldn't. She did, I whispered. And she admitted it. There was nothing but silence on the line for a long time. Then she whispered, "Oh my God," and hung up. I stood there, phone still in hand, staring at the gray light coming through the curtains. The house felt emptier than it ever had before. When I went downstairs, Mom was sitting at the table, staring at her cold coffee. Her eyes were red, her hair a mess, but there was no trace of remorse. Just exhaustion. She looked up when she saw me. He left his wedding ring. I didn't say anything. I guess that means he's done, she added softly, like she was still trying to convince herself it was temporary. I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could act so calm after detonating everything we knew. But instead, I just said, "You should have thought about that before." She flinched but didn't argue. By afternoon, everyone in the family knew. My aunt called, then Grandma, then my sister again. It spread faster than any rumor we'd ever dealt with. The whispers, the pity, the anger. It was like watching our reputation crumble in real time. My sister came over that evening, still in shock. She didn't even take off her coat when she walked in. "Mom, tell me it's not true." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, honey. Sorry." My sister's voice cracked. "You destroyed our family and all you can say is sorry?" Mom reached for her hand, but she pulled back like the touch burned her. "I don't even recognize you right now." I stood in the corner, watching the same scene I'd lived that morning play out again, but this time with more noise, more heartbreak. Mom broke down crying, and for a second my sister hesitated. Then she sat beside her and wrapped her arms around her like nothing had happened. That's when it hit me. She wasn't mad at Mom. She was mad at the situation. The difference was everything. I walked out before either of them could notice. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. The streetlights flickered, and somewhere down the block, I saw Dad's car parked near the corner. I didn't approach him. He was sitting inside, headlights off, staring at the house from a distance. For a second, I thought he might come back in. But he didn't. He just sat there, staring, before finally turning the key and driving away. I wanted to chase after him, tell him that I understood, that I was on his side. But my feet wouldn't move. I just stood there, watching his taillights disappear into the fog. That night, I lay in bed replaying everything. Mom's blank stare, my sister's disbelief, Dad's silent goodbye. Our family wasn't just broken. It was unrecognizable. And deep down, I knew this wasn't going to stay between us. Mom's boss, him, the man behind it all, wasn't going to keep quiet either, because men like him never do. 2 days later, his wife showed up at our door, and that was when I realized this story was about to get a lot uglier. 2 days passed after Dad drove away. The house had turned into a museum, quiet, airless, full of things no one wanted to touch. Mom barely left her room. My sister hadn't called. Then came the knock. It was sharp, repetitive, angry. When I opened the door, a woman stood there holding an envelope in one hand and a phone in the other. Her lipstick was smudged, her eyes red. For a second, I didn't recognize her. Then it hit me. I'd seen her before. At Mom's office Christmas party. She was his wife. She didn't wait to be invited in. She just pushed past me, heels clicking against the floor. "Is she here?" Mom came out of the hallway at the sound of her voice. The color drained from her face. "Oh my God," Mom whispered. "Karen, don't." The woman's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare say my name like we're friends." I stood frozen, heart pounding. Karen tossed the envelope onto the table. I think you forgot to tell your family what you did to mine. Photos spilled out. The same ones Dad had received, only worse. Screenshots, emails, hotel receipts. Evidence of every lie, every stolen hour. Mom tried to reach for them, but Karen slapped her hand away. You ruined my marriage, my family, and you think you can just hide in your little house and cry about it? Please, Mom started, but her voice was barely audible. No, Karen snapped. You don't get to play the victim. You knew he was married, you knew. You smiled at me at the office like nothing was wrong. Her voice broke, trembling now. You destroyed everything I built. My children hate me because of you. I felt like I was watching a bomb go off in slow motion. Mom finally found her voice. He told me you two were separated. Karen laughed bitterly. Separated? Oh, that's rich. We were in therapy trying to fix our marriage. While you were busy helping him destroy it? Mom's shoulders sagged. I didn't know! Liar! Karen spat. You always knew. Women like you always do. The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the ticking clock on the wall sounded loud. Then Karen turned to me. And you must be her daughter. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry you have to find out what kind of woman she really is, she said, her tone softening for just a moment. But don't make the mistake of defending her, because once a liar, always a liar. She gathered the photos and shoved them back into the envelope. I already gave a copy to your husband, she told Mom coldly. And I sent one to your boss, too. Enjoy unemployment. Mom's knees buckled slightly. You didn't? Oh, I did, Karen said, almost smiling. I lost everything because of you. You don't get to keep your job on top of it. Then she turned and walked out the door without another word. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Mom stood still, shaking, one hand gripping the table for balance. Finally, she whispered, She ruined me. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that made her flinch. She ruined you? I said. You did that yourself, Mom. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut her off. You cheated on Dad with her husband, and now you're shocked there are consequences? Stop talking to me like that, she said, her voice trembling between anger and guilt. I'll stop when you start acting like a human being again, I snapped. That night, I locked myself in my room, but sleep never came. I could still hear Karen's voice echoing in my head, the fury, the heartbreak. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about my family anymore. 2 families were burning, both built on lies neither side could come back from. Downstairs, I could hear Mom pacing, crying, calling someone, probably him. The same man who had vanished the second things got ugly. It struck me then. She had lost everything in 48 hours. Her husband, her job, her reputation. And yet, even then, she wasn't sorry. She was just scared. But what I didn't know that night was that my sister, the one who refused to take sides, was about to do something that would tear what little was left of us apart for good. The weeks after Karen's visit passed in a blur. Mom barely left her room, surviving on cigarettes and silence. Dad had stopped answering calls. My sister Laura pretended nothing was happening. She refused to discuss it, refused to hear my side, refused everything. Her wedding was 3 weeks away, and apparently, family drama wasn't on her schedule. I can't deal with this right now, she said one night over the phone, her voice sharp with exhaustion. I'm getting married in 20 days. Can we please not make everything about Mom and Dad? Laura, Dad's sleeping in a friend's basement, I said. Mom's job is gone. Their marriage is over. How can you pretend? I'm not pretending, she cut me off. I'm choosing peace. Something you might try for once. That stung. She'd always been the golden child. Calm, diplomatic, graceful. I was the one who said what everyone else was afraid to. And in her eyes, that made me the problem. When Dad told me he wasn't sure about attending her wedding, I didn't blame him. It's her day, he said quietly, packing his old suit. She deserves happiness, even if I'm not part of it. But I couldn't let him stay away. Not again. Dad, I told him, you raised us. You have to be there, he sighed, eyes tired. I'll go. But not for her mother. The day of the wedding arrived with heavy gray skies. The venue was beautiful, an old vineyard draped in white roses. Everything looked perfect, but it felt wrong, like a stage play with a broken script. Mom arrived late, wearing a pale blue dress that didn't quite fit. Her eyes were hidden behind sunglasses even though the sun never came out. People whispered when she walked in. She was a story everyone knew, but no one dared to speak aloud. Dad sat quietly in the back, his tie slightly crooked, his expression unreadable. I sat next to him, pretending not to notice the way people avoided looking our way. When the music started, everyone stood. Laura walked down the aisle glowing, arm in arm with our uncle instead of Dad. She didn't even glance toward us. I swallowed hard. The ceremony went on perfectly. At least, until the speeches. After the toasts and laughter, Laura took the microphone. Her voice trembled with emotion. I want to thank everyone who made this day possible, especially my mom. Mom smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. She's my best friend, Laura continued, her voice steadying. She's shown me strength, love, and what it means to forgive. I felt my stomach twist. And, Laura went on, turning toward a table near the front, I also want to thank someone who's been like a father to me these past few years. Mr. Whitmore. The name hit like a bullet. Mom's boss. Her affair partner. He was sitting there, smiling. At her wedding, the room went dead silent. I looked at Dad. His hand froze mid-clap, his face pale. My chest tightened with rage. I could hear people whispering, the air thick with disbelief. Mom stared at the floor. She hadn't known either. Laura smiled awkwardly. He's been such a support to me and Mom through everything. I don't know what we'd have done without him. I stood up before I even realized I was doing it. You've got to be kidding me. All eyes turned. Is this a joke? I said, voice shaking. You're thanking the man who destroyed our family? You're honoring him? Sit down, Laura hissed, her face red. Don't do this here. No, let's do it here, I snapped. Let's thank the man who cheated on his wife, ruined our parents' marriage, and then showed up to play proud stepdad. Someone gasped. Dad stood quietly, his chair scraping the floor. He didn't say a word, just walked out. Laura's voice trembled. You ruined my wedding. I met her eyes. No, Laura, Mom did, he did. You just handed them a microphone. The microphone clattered against the floor. The DJ didn't even try to play music. The silence said enough. That night, I found Dad sitting outside the venue, smoking a cigarette. The first I'd ever seen him touch. He looked at me and said quietly, You can't save people from who they choose to be. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. What I didn't realize was that this night, the wedding, the explosion, would be the last time our entire family would ever be in the same room again. After the wedding, there were no more phone calls. No family group chats, no polite text updates about birthdays or holidays, just silence. It wasn't the kind of silence that fades with time. It was heavy, deliberate. The kind you build walls out of. Dad moved into a small apartment above an auto shop on the edge of town. I helped him carry boxes up a narrow staircase, the air thick with oil and rain. The space was barely big enough for one person. But he didn't complain. He hung 2 pictures on the wall, one of my sister and me as kids, and another of his parents. Not Mom, not a trace of her anywhere. You don't have to stay, sweetheart, he said as he unfolded an old couch. I'm fine. I looked at him, the way his shoulders had thinned, the way he tried to smile through exhaustion. And I knew he wasn't fine. None of us were. Back home, Mom spent her days pacing the living room, waiting for a call that never came. She tried reaching Dad a few times, but he never picked up. Once I heard her leave a voicemail. Daniel, it's me. Please, we should talk, for the kids at least. He never called back. She lost her job the following week. Apparently, Karen had made good on her threat. The HR department found the photos. Her resignation was requested before the rumors could spread. After that, she barely left the house. The blinds stayed drawn, the kitchen untouched. The only sound was the soft creak of her footsteps as she moved from one empty room to another. I started staying with Dad more often. His apartment smelled like coffee and machine oil, but it was peaceful. He'd started fixing up old engines again, said it kept his hands busy, his mind quiet. He didn't talk about Mom much. When he did, it was in half sentences. She used to love that place. Your mother hated this kind of weather. Never with anger, just a quiet kind of ache. Meanwhile, Laura stopped speaking to both of us. I tried reaching out once, but she shut it down fast. "You embarrassed me," she texted. "You ruined the best day of my life." I typed out a dozen replies before deleting every one of them. There was no point. She'd made her choice. The family that used to have Sunday dinners together now lived like strangers in 3 different corners of the same town. One night, Dad and I were sitting in his tiny kitchen eating takeout when he said something that stuck with me. People think families break in one big moment, but it's never like that. It's small things, silence, pride, pretending. Then one day there's nothing left to fix. I didn't respond. He wasn't looking for an answer anyway. Months passed. Seasons changed. And for a while, I thought maybe this was just how it would be. 3 people carrying the weight of one woman's mistake. Then, one afternoon, as I was helping Dad organize his old photo albums, I found a picture tucked in the back of a drawer. It was Mom, years younger, smiling, her head resting on Dad's shoulder. The 2 of them looked happy, sunburned, alive. Dad stared at it for a long time before saying softly, "I used to think love was enough." He set the photo down and went back to sorting his tools. That night, as I drove home, I passed our old house. The lights were off except for one faint glow upstairs, Mom's room. She was sitting by the window, staring out into the street, a glass of wine in her hand. I didn't stop. I just kept driving, because somewhere along the way I'd realized something hard to admit. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired, and maybe that was worse. But silence doesn't last forever, because one night, months later, the phone rang again, and this time it was Laura. Crying. It was close to midnight when the phone rang. The sound jolted me awake. For a second, I thought it was Dad. Maybe something had happened. But when I saw the name flashing on the screen, my heart stopped. Laura. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" At first there was nothing. Just the sound of her breathing, shaky and uneven. Then a soft, broken whisper. "He's cheating on me." I sat up instantly. "What?" her voice cracked. "Evan, my husband. I saw the messages, the photos. He's been seeing someone from work." For a moment the room spun. I didn't know what to say. It felt like the world had looped back on itself, a cruel rerun of everything we'd already lived through. "Where are you?" I asked. "At home," she sobbed. "He's gone. He left after I confronted him. I'm coming over." When I got there, the house looked the same as it always had. Perfect lawn, perfect furniture, perfect illusion. But inside, it was chaos. Laura was sitting on the floor, surrounded by wine bottles and crumpled tissues. Her makeup was smeared, her hair a mess. For the first time in her life, she looked human. She looked up at me, eyes swollen. I didn't know who else to call. I sat beside her, wordless. Sometimes silence is the only kindness you can offer. After a while, she spoke again. "I used to think Mom was weak, that she just fell out of love. But now I get it. It's like your heart gets replaced by confusion. You can't think. You just break." I turned to her slowly. "You defended her." "I know," she whispered. "I thought I was being fair, that I was choosing love over judgment, but I was just blind." She started crying again, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs you can't control. I held her, and even though part of me wanted to say I told you so, I didn't. Because watching her fall apart like that, it wasn't victory. It was tragedy repeating itself. When she finally calmed down, she said something I'll never forget. "When you stood up at my wedding, I hated you. I thought you were jealous or angry. But you were right. You were just the only one brave enough to say what I couldn't. That hit harder than I expected. She looked around at the mess, the empty bottles, the half-packed suitcase. I feel like I'm living Mom's life, she said quietly. Same pain, same lies, different names. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock. Life goes on, even when everything inside you stops. I helped her clean up a bit, tucked her into bed, and left a glass of water on the nightstand. Before I left, she reached out and grabbed my hand. Can you stay? I nodded and sat down on the edge of the bed. I'm not going anywhere, she smiled weakly. I don't deserve you. You're my sister, I said. That's all that matters. For the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the person she used to be. Soft, kind. The one who used to braid my hair before school and sneak me candy when Mom said no. As she drifted off to sleep, I walked out to the living room and stared at the family photos on her wall. Her wedding picture hung in the center, her and Evan, all smiles and champagne. I took it down and placed it face down on the table. It felt symbolic somehow, the end of a lie. Driving home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Mom, about how this exact same pain had started everything, and how maybe for the first time, Laura would finally understand what Dad had gone through. When I told Dad the next morning, he just sighed. Life's funny like that, he said. It always finds a way to make you face yourself. He paused, then added, maybe this is how she learns. Pain can teach where pride never could. A week later, Laura showed up at Dad's apartment, not to cry, but to ask for something I never thought I'd hear again. Forgiveness. Dad's apartment hadn't changed. Same oil-stained floors, same humming radiator, same smell of coffee and dust. But that morning, when I opened the door for Laura, it felt different. Like the air had thickened with memories. She stood outside clutching a grocery bag, her hands trembling. No makeup, no armor. Just my sister, stripped of every layer she used to hide behind. You sure he's okay with this? She whispered. He didn't say no, I said. That's something. She nodded, took a shaky breath and stepped inside. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a newspaper. He looked up when he saw her, and for a second, his face went blank. The kind of stillness that comes when emotions hit too fast to process. Hi, Dad, Laura said softly. He folded the newspaper slowly. You look tired. I am, she admitted, voice trembling. Silence settled between them, heavy but alive like a heartbeat. I brought breakfast, she said, holding up the bag. Your favorite? From Joe's Diner, Dad blinked. That place still open? Yeah, she smiled faintly. Still burns the toast. That broke something in the air. Dad exhaled, a quiet, shaky breath that sounded almost like relief. All right then, he said. Let's eat. We sat together, the three of us, like ghosts relearning how to be a family. The food went mostly untouched. The clink of silverware filled the gaps where words should have been. Finally, Laura put down her fork and looked at him. Dad, I'm sorry. He didn't answer. Just stared at his plate. She tried again. I was awful to you. I didn't want to believe Mom could do something like that. So I blamed you instead. I thought she was the one who needed protecting. Her voice cracked. I see it now. I see what you went through. I'm so sorry. Dad's hands were still. His eyes glistened, but he didn't look up. You were young, he said quietly. And you loved your mother. There's nothing wrong with that. There was when it meant hurting you, she whispered. He finally looked at her. Then, really looked. You were her daughter, Laura. You wanted to believe the best in her. That's not a sin. Her tears spilled over. But I made you feel like a stranger. He gave a small, sad smile. You did, but I was never angry, just disappointed that I couldn't make you see it sooner. That's when she broke. She stood, walked around the table, and threw her arms around him. For a second he froze. Then his arms came up, slow and steady, holding her like something fragile he'd lost a long time ago. I had to look away. They stayed like that for a long time, both crying quietly. Not the dramatic kind of crying, but the exhausted kind. The kind that means something's finally releasing after years of being held back. When they finally sat again, Dad poured coffee for all three of us. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly. "I just want you to be happy. Really happy. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else." Laura wiped her eyes and smiled faintly. "I don't even know what that looks like anymore." "You will," he said. "You just have to stop carrying everyone else's mistakes." It was such a simple sentence, but it hit like truth always does, quiet and sharp. We stayed there all afternoon, talking in pieces. Laura told him about the divorce papers, about moving into a smaller apartment, about starting over. He listened to every word like it was sacred. Before she left, she looked around his tiny apartment. "You deserve more than this," she said. He smiled. "This is enough. Peace is worth more than space." When she hugged him goodbye, he whispered something I didn't catch. But whatever it was, it made her cry again. The good kind this time. After she left, I helped Dad clear the table. He said quietly, "She's been carrying guilt longer than you know. Letting go isn't easy." I nodded. "Do you think she'll be okay?" He smiled, that small, tired smile of his. "She's my daughter. She'll find her way." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him, but what none of us expected was that just as our family was finding its way back, together, the one person we'd tried hardest to forget was about to return. It was late afternoon when the knock came. 3 soft taps against the door, barely there, but enough to shift the air in the room. Dad was watching an old baseball game, the kind where the commentators spoke in slow tones that filled the silence. I was in the kitchen, rinsing coffee mugs, thinking about nothing at all. Then I heard him say quietly, "Don't open it yet." Something in his voice made me pause. It wasn't fear, it was knowing. The knocking came again. I dried my hands and looked at him. "Are you expecting someone?" He shook his head slowly, eyes fixed on the door. "No, but I know who it is. When I opened it, she was standing there. My mother, older, smaller. Her hair was streaked with gray now, her face drawn and tired, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the strap of her purse. "Hi," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. For a moment, the world just stopped. The hum of the TV, the clink of the faucet, gone. All that existed was her, framed in the doorway, looking like someone who'd been lost for years and had finally found the courage to come home. Dad didn't move. He just stared at her. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. Her eyes met mine, and I could see everything she wasn't saying. Regret, exhaustion, fear. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in slowly, like she was afraid the floor might give way beneath her. The smell of her perfume hit me. Faint, familiar, and haunting. The same one she used to wear before everything fell apart. Dad stood up but didn't speak. The silence between them was almost physical, a wall built out of 10 years of pain. Finally she said, "You look well." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You don't," she nodded. "I deserve that." The tension in the room was unbearable. I wanted to leave, to give them space, but something told me I needed to stay, to hear whatever this was going to be. "I heard about Laura," she said softly. "I went by her place, but she wouldn't see me." "She doesn't owe you that," Dad said evenly. "I know," she swallowed hard. "But she's still my daughter." He looked at her for a long time. "You stopped being their mother when you walked away from the truth." Her eyes glistened. "I didn't walk away. I fell apart. I thought he loved me, Daniel. I really did." Dad's jaw tightened. "He didn't, and you knew that." Her voice broke. "I was stupid. I was selfish. I ruined everything that mattered, and I've lived every day since then knowing I can't undo it." No one spoke. The only sound was the faint buzz of the refrigerator. Finally, I said quietly, "Why now, Mom? Why come back after all this time?" She turned toward me. "Because I heard your father was sick, and because I couldn't stand the thought of him. Leaving this world hating me. Dad's face softened, just a little. "I don't hate you," he said. "I stopped hating you a long time ago." Her tears finally fell. "Then what do you feel?" He took a deep breath. "Sadness. For what we lost. For what we could have been. But not hate." It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard him say. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. For a second I almost reached out. Almost. But something held me back. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said through tears. "I just needed you to hear me say I'm sorry." Dad nodded slowly. "You said it." She looked at me then, her eyes pleading, fragile. "And you? Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer, not yet. Because forgiveness isn't a word you throw out like an apology card. It's something you grow into. So instead, I said, "You should eat." "There's coffee," she smiled faintly. "You sound just like him." And that tiny sentence was enough to break me in ways she'd never understand. But just as we began to think maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to live with the past. A single phone call would remind us that time doesn't heal everything. It was early morning when the phone rang again. The kind of hour where the light hasn't fully decided whether to rise or not. Gray, quiet, uncertain. I was in the kitchen making coffee. Mom was asleep on the couch. She'd been staying with us for a few weeks now. Things between her and Dad had settled into a strange rhythm. Polite conversations, soft silences, no big emotions. Just coexistence. Dad had been tired lately. He said it was just work, just age, but I could see it in his face, the way his hands shook, the way his breathing came heavier after climbing the stairs. When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. But something, instinct maybe, made me pick it up. "Hello?" It was the hospital. Their voices are always calm, rehearsed. "Is this Daniel's daughter?" the nurse asked. My throat went dry. "Yes, there's been an incident. Your father collapsed at work this morning. He's stable for now, but you should come." Stable. That word felt both comforting and terrifying. I woke Mom first. She sat up fast, panic flashing in her eyes before I even said anything. "What happened?" "He collapsed," I said quietly. "They're keeping him for observation." She pressed her hands to her face. Oh God. The drive to the hospital was silent. The kind of silence that only exists when two people share the same fear, but can't say it out loud. When we walked into his room, the sound of the monitors was the only proof he was still here. He looked smaller somehow, fragile, but his eyes were open. And when he saw us, he smiled. "Didn't think I'd get both of you in the same room again," he whispered. Mom let out a shaky laugh through tears. "You scared us," he shrugged. "Guess I needed a dramatic reunion." Even lying in that bed, with tubes and monitors and IVs, he still tried to make it easier for everyone else. That was Dad. Always protecting, always steady. The doctor came in, polite and professional. Words like heart strain, elevated enzymes, early signs, caution filled the room, but none of them mattered. The only thing that mattered was that Dad looked at us and said, "I'm okay." We both knew he wasn't. That night, after Mom went home to rest, I stayed by his bedside. The TV hummed softly in the background, some old sitcom playing reruns. He looked at me after a while and said, "You know, I never thought I'd see your mother again." She said the same thing. He nodded slowly. I forgave her years ago. Not for her, for me. Carrying that anger was killing me long before my heart gave out. I looked down. "She's trying, Dad." "I know," he said softly. "But forgiveness isn't about trying. It's about accepting what's already done and choosing to live anyway." He reached for my hand. His grip was weak, but warm. "Promise me something, sweetheart. Anything. When I'm gone, don't spend your life protecting what's broken. Build something new, something that lasts." My throat tightened. "Don't talk like that." He smiled faintly. "I'm not planning to die today, but I'm old enough to know life doesn't wait for your permission." I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice just wouldn't come, so I sat there, holding his hand until he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, when I came back with breakfast, his bed was empty. The nurse smiled kindly and said, "He's fine, just out for tests." But something in her tone, the gentle softness, told me what I didn't want to hear. He didn't come back to that room. Later, when the doctor walked in, his eyes gave it away before his words did. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. He passed peacefully. "No pain. I didn't cry right away. Some griefs don't rush out. They settle quietly like dust." Mom arrived minutes later. When I told her, she fell to her knees, not from shock, but from the weight of years finally collapsing. She whispered, "He forgave me." And I never said thank you. I held her, both of us shaking, realizing forgiveness doesn't stop time. It just makes the ending bearable. A week later, as we stood together at his funeral, Laura walked toward us, holding something in her hands that would finally bring our story full circle. The day of the funeral was bright, unfairly bright, the kind of light that doesn't match grief. The church bells rang low and steady, echoing across the courtyard as people filed in wearing black. Dad would have hated it. He used to joke that funerals were the world's worst parties, all small talk and sadness. Mom stood beside me at the entrance, her hands clasped tightly together. She hadn't spoken much since he passed. Her face was pale, eyes red, but there was a quiet steadiness about her, like she knew this was the day she had to finally face everything she'd broken. Then I saw Laura. She looked different. Older somehow, not in years, but in presence. Her hair was tied back, her face bare, her posture careful but strong. She was holding something against her chest, wrapped in brown paper. When she reached us, she didn't say a word. She just hugged Mom. For a moment, Mom froze. Then slowly she hugged her back, sobbing quietly into her daughter's shoulder. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the closest thing to it. Inside, the ceremony was simple. A few words from the pastor, a few from Dad's old coworkers, stories about his kindness, his patience, his quiet humor. Each one felt like a small piece of him returning for a moment. When it was time to speak, Laura stood up. Her voice trembled at first, but it grew steadier with every word. My father wasn't perfect. None of us were. But he taught me something I'll never forget. That forgiveness isn't about weakness. It's about strength. It's about choosing peace even when you have every reason not to. Her voice broke a little. He once told me that you can't build a future while holding on to the wreckage of the past. I didn't understand it then. I do now. She glanced at Mom. Dad forgave when no one thought he could. And because of that, I think maybe we can too. When she sat down, Mom reached for her hand. This time, Laura didn't pull away. After the service, we followed the casket to the cemetery. The wind had picked up, scattering dry leaves over the grass. The headstone was simple. His name, the dates, and the words he loved quietly, but deeply. As people began to leave, Laura unwrapped the brown paper she'd been holding. Inside was an old photograph, one of all four of us years ago at the beach. Mom's hair blowing in the wind, Dad's arm around her shoulders, Laura and me building sandcastles near their feet. She knelt down and placed the photo at the base of the headstone. "I found it in one of his old boxes," she said softly. "He kept it all these years." Mom covered her mouth, her body trembling. "He forgave us a long time ago," I said. "We just took longer to catch up." We stayed there long after everyone else had gone, the three of us, standing together for the first time in what felt like forever. No words, no explanations, just quiet understanding. When the sun started to set, Laura took Mom's hand, and we walked back toward the car. The air smelled of wet grass and rain. Mom looked up at the sky and whispered, almost to herself, "He was right about everything." I turned to her. "About what?" "That love doesn't die when people do. It just changes shape." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Later that evening, back at Dad's apartment, I found a note taped to the inside of one of his drawers. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakably his. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say goodbye properly. Don't mourn too long. I had a good life, even with the pain. Especially with the pain, because it made me appreciate what mattered. You, Laura, and even your mother. love each other. That's all that ever counts. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking. I placed the note back where I found it, turned off the light, and sat for a while in the quiet. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful, like something had finally ended, and something new had quietly begun. Months later, Mom sold the old house. Laura moved closer. We started Sunday dinners again. Smaller, quieter, but real. Every time we sat down, there was an empty chair at the table. And somehow, that space made everything whole.